If you are someone that has been thinking about their career path for a long period of time, right? There's options, there's many options potentially. Maybe even some people are telling you what you should be doing. You're like, it doesn't quite work for me, it doesn't quite fit, it doesn't quite click for whatever reason. Maybe you have been mulling this over your entire life, constantly wondering to yourself, like, what is my calling? What is my purpose? What am I meant to be doing? And every now and then you get it, but then sort of it fades away and you lose it. Or maybe at one point in time you had it, and then it's sort of, for some reason, something happened in your life and it left you. Well, in this video, I wanted to explain an alternative approach to knowing what the right career path is. And this is based on a philosophy that I've been developing over the past 5 years. And if you don't know who I am, my name is Joe Yulee. I'm a philosopher. I help people every single day from all around the world to know what the right career path is with conviction. And the way that I do this is by helping them to unearth their career archetype. And I talk with people all the time about their careers, and oftentimes when people haven't chosen the right career path and I start to talk about the career archetype, they'll often pause and stop me and they'll say, what is that? What is that thing that you keep talking about? What is the career archetype? And in this video, I sort of wanted to go over what the career archetype is, why it's beneficial, how it can help you, and why I use it to help people to choose the right career path, and why it gives them a sense of conviction once they have an understanding of what their career archetype is. And so if you're watching this, you've probably done a bunch of different personality tests. You've probably done a bunch of different exercises, certain questions, certain Venn diagrams. I think one of the more famous ones are the Ikigai, the Japanese philosophy around sort of discovering how to make yourself truly happy. And for many of the people that I work with, these methods didn't work. And it didn't just not work for them. I also went through a period where I was trying to figure out what my path was. What am I trying to do? What is my purpose? What is my calling? And I couldn't figure it out. And I used all these different methods. I spoke with loved ones. I remember speaking to my mom and asking her what she thinks I should be doing with my life. And she said, I think you would be a great firefighter. And I remember just like some of these responses that I was getting from different people, their intention was in the right place and their heart was in the right place, but it didn't click with me underneath. It didn't have that level of like oomph that I needed, this is the thing I'm actually meant to be pursuing in my life. And it wasn't until I got so frustrated with this process of trying to figure out what my path was that I ended up getting rid of all the methods and started to go in a more of like a first principles and philosophical approach on, okay, what is this thing that we call a calling, a vocation, a path, a career, and how do I find it for myself? And I ended up stumbling on my own career archetype, which was a philosopher. Now, this is one of the sort of ways in which you can begin to see what a career archetype is. It's through the titles. So you would have seen different titles in the world. Say, for example, healer, artist, oracle, divine messenger, perfumer, graphic designer. All these different titles are different career archetypes. They're energetic expressions that rule the career path. And so that's what a career archetype is. It's an energetic expression that rules the career path. Oftentimes, the archetype in its purest form, normally most people don't actually connect to it in its purest form, but when it's in its purest form, it is as an image, and that image resides in the deepest parts of who you are. And it's actually really tricky to get into contact with it if you haven't been given the right guidance or the right approach on how to pursue it, which is why so many people, they can be living their entire lives not knowing what their true calling is. And they'll end up veering into what I call as temptation paths that take them away from the thing that they're meant to be pursuing, rather than knowing what the thing is and confronting that and then pursuing it. And so for many people, their career archetype, this title, it resides in a dormant fashion, meaning that it's inactive, it's within them, but it hasn't been brought into conscious awareness. It's very much masked, or you could say it's veiled, it's hidden in the darkness. And because it's hidden, and because they don't know what it is, they end up going through life in a way that is less optimal. They're going through life in a way that is more suited to someone else's career archetype, rather than saying like, oh, this is my career archetype, that doesn't work for me. And when you don't know what your career archetype is, it's very hard to look at all the different options and know with very clear sense of certainty, like, that's definitely not for me. That's not for me, that's not for me, that's not for me. Oh, that's for me because I know what my career archetype is. And so getting in tune with your career archetype can give you clarity around the different options. Often when people have many different options, it's because they're disconnected from the lower parts of themselves or the soul level. And that's why all these different options look as though they can be weighted at a similar level. Now, when it comes to the career archetype and understanding what I mean when I say this energetic expression that rules your career path, one analogy that I really like using is if you think about clay. So think about molding some like wet clay and being able to fashion it into particular different shapes. You might turn it into a vase, you might take the piece of clay and turn it into a cup. Now, the forms at which the clay takes is dependent on the person that is working with the clay. But clay itself is going to be the same material used for the cup, for the vase, for the plate. And so clay can take on all these different forms, but the material is the same. Now, this is the same sort of thinking or way of seeing the career archetype itself, because when you have the career archetype itself, you're aware of the energetic expression or the material that it is, and then you can fashion it in a way that is in accordance with your own nature, that is in accordance with how you want to express this particular career archetype. As an example, right now, I say that my career archetype is a philosopher. And when I unearthed my career archetype and started looking and investigating how people were expressing this career archetype, I saw that they were in universities. Or I also saw, and I would read on Reddit forums, that you can't make a living out of this, don't even bother being a philosopher, go and do something else. And for me personally, I was like, I'm going to be a philosopher, and that's my career archetype, and there's no way to change that stuff. But I can express it, and I can structure my path in a way that is in alignment with how I want to live. So I didn't go to a university, and instead I help people to choose the right career path with conviction every single day and getting them to find meaning in their work, which is so important and so relevant in terms of being a philosopher. And so you can see how just knowing this energetic expression, but then being able to mold it to your own uniqueness can help you to walk a path not only that allows you to go deep, right? You can master and embody your own career archetype over a long period of time, but also you don't have to walk it in a way that is against how you're meant to be walking it, because you have a sense of like, this isn't correct for me. This type of style doesn't fit with my nature. Even though everybody else that has this career archetype is walking that way, it doesn't quite work for me. So it gives you an understanding of how to mold what material is within you, which actually leads me to a second problem that people often run into. Because so many people don't know what their career archetype is, they don't have a very clear understanding of the energy, of the name of it, and they're sort of given different paths by other people. It might be by society, they might have sort of fallen into a university setting and a professor like prodded them in a direction and said like, hey, you should definitely go and do your master's in this field. And so suddenly they're walking this trajectory, they're walking this path, and it's like, oh, this isn't quite it, but they don't know what else to go into because they're unaware of this archetypal nature that is within them. And that's what happens when you're unaware of it. It's normally just frustration that comes up. It's like, I can't quite see it, I don't quite know it. But when you are aware of your career archetype, you know what the material is, and then you can begin to fashion it in the correct way. So the way that people will end up walking their paths when they don't know their career archetype is if you also think about the analogy of somebody building a bridge. And if somebody's going and building a bridge, to create the strongest bridge, they're probably going to use something like steel. So that's the material. They're using steel as the material to go ahead and build the bridge. Now, the problem is that some people have the material of clay within them, and yet they see out in the world that other people are building the bridge with steel. And so they say, okay, I guess I've got to go and try and build a bridge because everybody else is building a bridge, so therefore I'm going to go ahead and build the bridge in the same way. And so they'll go and they'll start to mold clay into a bridge that clay is going to be much weaker. It's not going to function in the same way. It doesn't have that same essence in it. And so somebody with steel might even recommend to somebody with clay, like, hey, you should build a steel bridge. And that person's like, yeah, totally. And then they start building it with clay, unaware that they're using clay. And so the first thing is, hey, we need to get you aware of your career archetype so that you know what material you're even using. You know what's at the base. That's where you can build everything from. And then you might say, well, how does this material express itself in the world? Well, it's probably not going to express itself in building a bridge. It's probably closer to pottery. Right? It's a very different function. It's a very different expression of that energy. And so you don't want to build a steel bridge if you have clay. In the same way that if you have steel, you probably don't want to create pottery. You want to create bigger, stronger structures. You want to create the Eiffel Tower. And this is why it's so important to know what your career archetype is, and it helps you to avoid walking down the wrong path, walking down temptation paths. Because when you know what your material is, these other paths, it becomes really, really obvious. Now, the other thing that I wanted to mention when it comes to your career archetype and knowing what your career archetype is it actually helps you to inform your worldview. And it tells you how this part of yourself is woven into other areas of your own life. If you were to take the career archetype of a perfumer, let's say that there's a perfumer career archetype and they just naturally and instinctually want to smell the world, and they see the world even through smell. Now, if somebody else was to come to them and to tell them like, hey, you can only smell during office hours, and it's really, really strange when we go for walks and you just can't help stopping at every single flower. If you're that way inclined and then somebody else starts to hinder your natural nature, you might stop. You might say, oh, okay, I probably shouldn't be smelling everything as I'm walking past. But if you knew that that was your career archetype, which will help you get towards what I call your exalted form, your higher state of being, then you would know that you would need a life that would allow you to see the world through smell. It's why your career archetype will inform you not only on this sort of professional side of yourself, but also it will inform a way of being, how to approach life, how to see the world. And it will give you your worldview. And anybody that has, so I'll go back to my own career archetype with philosopher, even in the name, it's baked in, which is the pursuit of wisdom. So this very much will inform my approach to life, how I go about decisions, how I interact with others, with the world, with society, constantly knowing that my career archetype is philosopher and how that connects with everything else. If you were a healer, that would also inform how you connected with life, with others, and with these other aspects of not only your professional life, but also just your life in general when you're outside of work. And this idea of knowing your career archetype and why it's so important is because it will root you in the very foundations of your own soul. And it will tell you and inform you on what it is that you need to approach in life, what it is you need to pursue in life. And it's like having your own inner compass. So you don't need to go and ask advice from so-and-so. You don't need to go and get coaching from so-and-so. You don't need to sign up to some program that says, like, hey, I'm going to coach you on how to go about your path exactly. And instead what it is it gives you this inner compass that can tell you when you tune into it, okay, turn right, go straight, keep going, go left again, straight. And it will instruct you on how to walk your path. And a lot of that has to do with not only knowing your career archetype, but then embodying it. And when you're embodying it and being in communication with it and building a relationship with it, which really is just you building a relationship with yourself at the deepest level, you'll be able to navigate the path with ease. All these different options won't be options anymore, because you'll begin to understand that not only are you rooted in your career archetype, but all these different interests, some of them can be woven into the fabric of the past, some of them can be left out. But the way that you make that decision is you tune into your career archetype and you find out what is the correct thing to do. And so with that is my introduction to the career archetypes. Now, if you're interested in learning more about the career archetypes, if you're interested in getting your own career archetype unearthed, maybe you are somebody that has been struggling to choose their career path for a while, or maybe you're going through a career transition, then unearthing your career archetype can give you that sense of clarity that you need in order to begin to walk your path or continue to refine your path. And so in that membership, I end up showing people step-by-step how to unearth their career archetype. I also show people how to walk the first steps of that path as well. You'll see other members within that space sharing their journey, sharing their career archetypes as well, and how they are embodying it. I also show people how to weave in these different interests. So if you're very creative, if you're spiritually inclined, you're probably going to have multiple different interests. How do you weave these into the fabric of the path? So if you're interested in that, check it out. Underneath this video, I'll leave a link.